In a post-apocalyptic world where the medical system collapses, this father runs wildly through the grass with his shot son in his arms. If he doesn't get treatment, he'll die soon. The man leading the way behind him could not run, and he accidentally shot Carl. The man said that further up the road was their farm. There was a doctor at the farm who could treat Carl. Rick held back the soreness in his arms, not daring to lose any time. Half an hour later, he finally arrived at the farm gate, dragging his tired body to tell the story of how Carl was shot and asked them to treat Carl. The older man with white hair was undoubtedly Herschel, who did not ask many questions and asked his daughter to bring out all the medical tools. Everyone in the house started to get busy. Rick's main concern at this moment is whether Carl is still alive. Under the older man's examination, he still had a heartbeat, but it was very faint. Herschel told Rick to go outside and calm down. They would do everything they could to save his son. Rick's mind was completely blank at this point, and the thought of losing his son made this always calm man panic. A few minutes later, Herschel told Rick that Carl's condition was stable for now and that he should be ready for a blood transfusion. The man, whose name is Otis, explained that he was hunting when the bullet went through the elk and struck the boy. Herschel said the elk's body slowed down the bullet, which saved the child's life, but the bullet shattered into 6 pieces, and if he could get the pieces out, he could live. Otis, who fired the gun, was overwhelmed with guilt and talked to his wife like a child about the situation. Next was the operation to remove the fragments. Rick, who was drawing blood next to the bed, looked at his son who was in pain, and he lost his emotions. Herschel told him to be quiet at this point. Rick naturally understood that he could not be emotional. The most important thing is to hurry up a blood transfusion. After a while, Carl fainted from the pain, but only a fragment was removed. Herschel then said he was out of danger for the time being, but he still needed to get the other bullet fragments out. The bad thing is that the blood vessels in his abdomen must have been cut by the debris, and he still needs surgery to stitch him up. During this process, he must not move at all. If he does what he just did, it is likely to cut his artery accidentally, and he will be dead within minutes. To operate, he had to be put under anesthesia and unconscious, but he could not breathe on his own and had to go out to find a ventilator to ensure his safety. Otis aside reminded that the nearby hospital was burned by fire. Only the high school infirmary has a ventilator inside, but it was occupied by zombies before. There is no way to get close. Shane volunteered to find the equipment because Rick had to stay behind for a blood transfusion. Otis guiltily said he would go with him. The two then drove to the high school. Daryl and the others are still searching for Sophia in the woods. Andrea was left behind but didn't notice a zombie approaching her. When she saw it, she was so scared that she screamed. The others immediately heard the sound. Andrea stabbed the zombie in the chest with the dagger in her hand, but not only was it useless, but she also tripped and fell to the ground herself. Just as she was about to be killed, a horse came running towards her. Someone saved her. It was Herschel's daughter Maggie. She shouted who Lori was. Maggie said Rick sent her and told Lori to come with her right away. Lori doesn't know what's going on. Maggie rushed to say that Carl had been shot and was still alive. Lori was so upset that all she could think about was Carl. Maggie then proceeded to tell Glenn the location of her family's farm. They then rode out of there, and Daryl and the others returned to the highway and told Dale what happened in the woods. Then several people gathered together for a meeting. We all felt that we shouldn't go on like this. The group was now very scattered. But Carol worries about her daughter. What if she returned? Finally, everyone decided to let Glenn take T-Dog to the farm first, because his arm also needs treatment, and the others stay on the road for another night. Soon, Lori also arrived at the farm, and the couple hugged each other tightly. At this time, only those who have been parents know how they feel at this moment. Lori came into the room and saw Carl. Looking at her son, who was suffering, her heart felt like a knife, and she prayed in Carl's ear that he would wake up soon. Shane and Otis arrived at the high school and took a cautious look inside, where there were at least 50 zombies. Otis tells Shane that the supplies are in the big trailer across the road. Shane took a look, and it was impossible to get through. Waiting until night, Shane carefully opened the front door of the police car and then opened the trunk, from which they took out a few lighting rods. They planned to use this thing to attract the zombies' attention and then sneak into the infirmary. The equipment inside was still there, and the two men followed the list to put all they could use into their backpacks. But when they opened the door and prepared to retreat, the zombies had already returned to their original location. This is a big problem. 2 people have been unable to care about days, can only rush to escape. The zombies at once towards them chased the tube too. Otis's size needs to be bigger. It is really hard to run. When they came around the corner, there were also zombies there, so they had to change directions. They just crossed an alley, and there were still zombies waiting for them. By the time they reached the entrance of the school building, there was no way to escape. The zombies in 3 directions gradually surrounded them, and Shane could only break the glass to enter the building and then pull up the security net. But before the two could breathe a sigh of relief, the net could not hold on. The two could only escape towards the upper floors and finally hit on the balcony of the 2nd floor, below which were countless zombies. At the same time, T-Dog and Glenn arrived at the farm, and Maggie at the door greeted them. Glenn immediately showed a shy look and stammered to speak. During the day, he saw Maggie's bold appearance and was smitten. Maggie noticed T-Dog's arm and led them into the house. T-Dog's arm was naturally treated. Fortunately, there are antibiotics here. Otherwise, T-Dog will certainly not escape a disaster. Maggie has a very good feeling for the clean-cut Glenn, looking at Glenn's silence, and also takes the initiative to chat with him, and Carl's situation is gradually deteriorating. Rick has been transfused 3 times if they really cannot wait for Shane to return, but also can only risk surgery. At this moment, a large number of zombies surrounded Shane and Otis. Shane wanted to jump out of the window, but Otis said his size could not fit through such a small window. He thought the best way is to let Shane stay here. He jumped down to lure the zombies away, so Shane will have a chance to get out of the window. Otis then handed the medical equipment to Shane. Otis fired 2 shots to attract the zombies' attention and then leaped down, but his weight was too much, and he fell. Good thing Shane shot him to help him escape. Otis also stopped dawdling and attracted the zombies to run in another direction. Shane saw the zombies were gone, breaking the glass. Shane was about to jump down when a zombie grabbed him. In an emergency, he pulled out a pistol and solved the zombie, but he also fell, which directly broke his foot. Shane just hissed twice in pain and immediately grabbed his backpack and prepared to retreat. In his opinion, Otis was in a bad way. The place was full of zombies, so he had to be careful not to make any noise. Luckily, the zombies were stopped by the stadium fence, but soon, he was followed by 3 zombies. Shane leaned against the wire fence with a determined look on his face and was about to finish off the 3 zombies, but then the zombie fell to the ground, and Otis arrived. Shane saw Otis some excitement, did not think he was still alive and did not care to do more communication. The two supported each other towards the direction of their car. They don't know how long the walk was. Shane's legs are painful. He told Otis to hurry up and leave himself alone, but Otis is kind-hearted. How can he do things that abandon his teammates? Shane pulls himself together and asks Otis how many bullets he has left. The simple Otis answered with 4 bullets left. The zombies began to approach again, and the two could only help each other while walking to kill the nearest zombie. Herschel at the farm told Rick that the child was losing more and more blood and couldn't wait for Shane and the others to come back. So they had to force the operation, and it was up to him to live or die. At this moment, Rick seems to hear the sound of a car outside. Thank God they are back. Shane quickly handed them the contents of his backpack. Herschel asks why Otis didn't come back. Shane sadly stated that he did not escape. Hearing this news, Maggie also showed a sad look. Herschel adjusted and asked the crowd not to tell his wife yet. Rick thanked his brother from the bottom of his heart, hugged him tightly, and comforted his emotions. Lori also cast a grateful glance. Shane said there were zombies in every part of the school. They only had 10 rounds left, and he escaped with Otis covering him. But Otis was surrounded by zombies too. The more Shane spoke, the more he choked up and began to break down emotionally. Several people are also infected by his emotions, especially Maggie, who has known Otis since he was a child, and he is a very kind person. At this time, Rick and Lori sat at the door waiting for the results of the operation. They had prayed for Carl countless times. At this time, Herschel came out and told them that the surgery was a success and that Carl's condition had stabilized. Only then did the couple let go of their worries. Rick decided to go with Herschel to tell his wife about Otis' death. Not surprisingly, his wife's entire mental world collapsed when she found out. Lori returns to the room and looks at her son with heartache. Shane walks in at this time, and aside from the fact that Lori is Rick's wife, he wants what's best for Lori and Carl. Lori is very grateful to him and urges him to stay and not leave. At bedtime, Shane gets ready for a good bath. His shoulder is badly bruised, and even a piece of his hair is missing. He thought back to his escape with Otis. He asked Otis, who had 4 rounds left, and the two ran and shot back. One was wounded, one was too big, and it was only a matter of time before the zombies caught up with him. He kept track of the number of shots Otis fired, and when he had fired all 4 rounds, Shane turned to him and said sorry. Shane shot him right in the leg and then went up to take his backpack away from him. Otis yanked on it and wouldn't let go. Otis also pulled on Shane's hair. and Shane could only pummel him like crazy. No surprise, Otis was surrounded by zombies. The end of the world is a mirror of human nature. No matter how righteous a person once was, he will reveal his true face. Shane shaved off his hair to forget about it and become a new man. The next morning, Daryl and the others arrived at the farm, and Rick and Herschel's family came out to greet them. Dale asked about Carl's condition. Listening to everyone's prayers, Shane was deep in thought, with the scene of their escape coming to mind from time to time. At this time, Herschel offered to let Shane give a speech for Otis. Shane wanted to say no, but Otis's wife said she wanted Shane to tell the story, so she would know that her husband had died for a good cause. Shane had no choice but to recount the scene, and he did so with great emotion, claiming that Otis saved him and Carl and that he was a great man. The people around him could imagine how bad the situation was, but it was all a lie that Shane had made up, and he couldn't have told the truth, or he wouldn't have survived in the crowd. Next, the crowd gathered again. Rick decided to divide the area into groups to search for Sophia, but Herschel said Rick just yesterday took 1,500 milliliters of blood and cannot go out to action. Shane's foot also tries not to overexercise for a month. The remaining suitable for wilderness survival is only Daryl. He is ready to go back to the woods to start looking. Next, Shane proposed the idea of training everyone to use firearms but was opposed by Herschel. He said not to use firearms on his farm. Rick can also understand. After all, it's his territory, and he has to follow his rules. Finally, at the request of the others, Dale was allowed to take a sniper rifle to keep watch. He was an old gunman. Maggie proposed that the search for the medicine inside the city. Rick directly recommended Glenn to accompany her. The guy is fast, or a living map. Daryl was soon ready to go out with a crossbow on his back, and Rick urged him to be careful. Watching Rick treat this place as home, Herschel said they generally do not accept strangers, do not want them to stay here more, wait to find Sophia and Carl's injuries healed, and let them leave. Rick did not say anything more. The sky was the world's end.